Thanksgiving night, Erie, Pennsylvania. Snow falling way too early. And me, Andrew Brooks, collapsing in a grocery store parking lot, clutching my chest, unable to breathe. I was supposed to grab cranberry sauce. That's it. One item my mother forgot, and somehow I was the one sent out into the cold while everyone else stayed warm, laughing around the table. The store was nearly empty. Just a few stragglers like me picking up last-minute things. I remember the automatic doors sliding open, the blast of cold air hitting my face, and then pain. Sharp, crushing pain spreading across my chest like someone was tightening a vise around my ribs. My knees hit the pavement first, then my hands. The grocery bag tumbled away, the can of cranberry sauce rolling under someone's car. I tried to call out, but my voice came out as barely a whisper. The cold seeped through my jeans, through my jacket, straight into my bones. Above me, the parking lot lights flickered through the falling snow, and I thought about how strange it was that snow was coming down this early in November. I fumbled for my phone with shaking fingers. Dad. I called Dad first. He picked up on the fourth ring, annoyed. I could hear voices in the background, my brother laughing at something, dishes clanking. "Dad," I managed to say, "something's wrong. I'm at the store. I can't breathe right." "Handle it alone. We're eating." Just like that. Then the line went dead. I stared at the phone screen, my vision blurring. Maybe I hadn't explained it right. Maybe he didn't understand. I tried my brother next. Same response, almost word for word. "Dude, we're in the middle of dinner. Just come back when you're done." My mother didn't even let me finish the sentence. "Andrew, I'm sure it's nothing. You always overreact. We'll see you when you get back." The pain was getting worse. It felt like my chest was being crushed from the inside. I could see my breath coming out in short, desperate puffs of white vapor. A car drove by slowly, the driver looking at me through the window, but not stopping. I tried to wave, but my arm felt so heavy. This wasn't the first time. Not the first time I'd needed help and been told to handle it myself. Growing up, every scraped knee, every fever, every moment I felt scared or hurt, there was always someone else's problem that mattered more. My brother's baseball games, Dad's work stress, Mom's book club. I learned early that my pain was inconvenient, that expressing it made me weak, that I should just deal with things quietly and not bother anyone. But this felt different. This felt final. The snow was accumulating on my shoulders now, in my hair. I could feel myself getting colder, my thoughts slowing down. The parking lot seemed so vast suddenly, so empty. The fluorescent lights of the grocery store glowed behind me like a distant memory of warmth. I scrolled through my contacts with numb fingers, past all the names of people who had already told me no, past friends who had drifted away over the years because I was too much or too sensitive, past coworkers who barely knew me. And then I saw it. One name I hadn't considered because she was supposed to be resting, supposed to be taken care of, supposed to be the one we protected. Grandma. She was 81 years old, living in a nursing home on the other side of Erie. It was Thanksgiving night. She should be comfortable, warm, maybe watching TV or reading. I shouldn't call her. I shouldn't burden her with this. But there was no one else. My thumb hovered over her name. The pain in my chest flared again, stealing my breath completely for a moment. I felt my body starting to give up, starting to shut down. The phone was so heavy in my hand. Without thinking any more, without considering whether I should or shouldn't, I pressed call. She answered on the first ring.
"Andrew?" Her voice was soft but alert, the way it always was. Even at 81, even in a nursing home, Grandma never really slept deeply on holidays. She told me once that her body still remembered having children to watch over, grandchildren to worry about. "Andrew, honey, what's happening to your breathing?" I hadn't even spoken yet. She just knew. From the sound of my breath through the phone, from the desperate silence, from something only grandmothers seem to have, that instinct that cuts through everything else and goes straight to the truth. "Grandma," I whispered, "I'm at the grocery store. Something's wrong. My chest. Where are your parents? They said to handle it alone. The silence that followed lasted only 2 seconds, but I felt the weight of her understanding in it. She knew. She'd always known what kind of family I'd grown up in, but hearing it now, like this, when I was dying in a parking lot, something shifted in that silence. "I'm coming, love," she said, and her voice had changed. It wasn't soft anymore. It was steel wrapped in velvet. "Stay on the phone with me. Don't hang up. Do you hear me?" "Grandma, you can't. It's snowing. I said I'm coming." I heard movement through the phone, rapid and purposeful. A door opening, her voice calling out, slightly distant. "Marianne! Marianne, I need you now!" Marianne was her caregiver at the nursing home, a trained nurse who'd been with Grandma for 3 years. I'd met her a few times, calm, efficient, the kind of person you wanted around in a crisis. I heard her voice now, concerned. "Eleanor, what's wrong?" "My grandson. He's collapsed. Grocery store on West 26th. He can't breathe right." Everything happened fast after that. I heard Marianne asking quick questions. Where exactly, how long, what symptoms. Grandma answered while I tried to focus on staying conscious. The cold was winning. My body wanted to just lie down completely, to close my eyes and stop fighting. "Andrew, stay with me, Grandma," said, her voice back at the phone. "Talk to me, baby. Tell me what you see." "Snow. Parking lot. No one's here. We're coming. Marianne's getting the car. We're leaving right now." Through the haze of pain, I felt something strange. Not just gratitude, but confusion. Why was Grandma the only one who heard me? Why was an 81-year-old woman in a nursing home the only person who believed me when I said I was in trouble? I thought about being 7 years old, falling off my bike and scraping my knees so badly I could see bone. Mom had been on the phone with her sister and waved me away. "Put a bandage on it, Andrew." But Grandma had been visiting that day. She had taken one look, scooped me up, and driven me to urgent care herself. 6 stitches. Mom never even knew. I thought about being 12, telling Dad I felt like I couldn't breathe right during soccer practice, that my chest hurt. He'd called me dramatic, told me to toughen up. But Grandma had insisted on taking me to the doctor. Asthma, they said. Mild, but real. Dad never apologized. I thought about being 17, crying in my room after my brother got the college fund and I got a lecture about learning to stand on my own feet. Grandma had shown up with a check she couldn't really afford and said, "Your dreams matter, Andrew. They always have." "Andrew?" Marianne's voice came through the phone now, professional and focused. "Andrew, I need you to answer some questions for me, okay? Can you do that?" "Yes," I breathed. "Is the pain in the center of your chest or to the left?" "Center. Spreading." "Are you sweating?" "Cold. So cold." "Nauseous?" "Little bit." I heard her say something to Grandma, something I couldn't quite catch. Then Grandma's voice came back, shakier than before. "We're in the car now, sweetheart. We're coming. Just hold on." "How far?" 17 minutes, but Marianne drives fast." I tried to laugh, but it came out as a cough that sent lightning through my chest. The phone slipped from my fingers, landing on the pavement beside my head. I could still hear Grandma's voice, small and distant. "Andrew? Andrew?" I reached for the phone, my fingers barely working. The snow was heavier now, covering everything in white silence. Above me, the sky was that strange, orange-gray color it gets when snow falls at night in a city. Through the phone, I heard Marianne's voice, quiet, but clear enough. "Eleanor, if we don't get to him fast, he won't make it."
The roads in Erie are dangerous on a good winter day. On Thanksgiving night, with snow falling thick and fast, they become something else entirely. Sheets of ice disguised as pavement, white lines invisible, brake lights blurring into red halos through the flakes. Marianne had driven through worse. She'd been an ER nurse before becoming a private caregiver, had worked night shifts through blizzards, and learned how to navigate emergencies when every second counted. But this was different. This time, it wasn't a stranger in the back of an ambulance. It was Eleanor's grandson, and Eleanor was gripping the passenger seat so hard her knuckles had gone white. I know this because Grandma told me later. She told me everything about that drive. She told me how Marianne stayed calm, how she kept both hands on the wheel and her voice steady as she called out landmarks. Passing 12th Street now, Eleanor. We're making good time. How the windshield wipers struggled to keep up with the snow, creating brief moments of clarity before the white rushed back in. She told me about the rosary, the one she'd kept since 1963, when she was pregnant with my mother and scared out of her mind that something would go wrong. The beads were worn smooth from decades of worried prayers, from hospital waiting rooms and midnight vigils, and every time someone she loved was in danger. She held it now, her lips moving silently, her faith the only thing keeping her from falling apart completely. But I didn't know any of that while it was happening. All I knew was cold. The phone had gone dead, either my battery or my fingers, I wasn't sure which. I lay there on the pavement, staring up at the snow, watching the flakes fall into my eyes. They didn't even feel cold anymore. Nothing felt like anything. The pain in my chest had evolved into something else, something that didn't even feel like pain anymore, but more like absence, like my body was forgetting how to be a body. I thought about dying alone in a grocery store parking lot on Thanksgiving. I thought about how the holiday would be ruined for everyone, not because they'd miss me, but because of the inconvenience, the police calls, the questions, the funeral arrangements nobody wanted to make. A car drove past, slowly, carefully. I tried to lift my arm to wave, but couldn't. The car kept going. Somewhere across Erie, Marianne took a turn too fast and felt the car slide. She corrected smoothly, professionally, but Eleanor gasped beside her, hand flying to the dashboard. "It's okay," Marianne said. "I've got it." "How much longer?" 8 minutes. 8 minutes felt like forever when you were sitting warm in a car. 8 minutes felt like seconds when you were lying on frozen pavement, feeling your life leak out with every shallow breath. Eleanor stared out the window at the houses they passed, all lit up with warm yellow light, families inside finishing their pies, watching football, arguing over board games. Normal Thanksgiving things. She thought about her own family, still sitting around that table, probably wondering where Andrew was with the cranberry sauce, but not worried enough to check, not worried enough to call. She'd known for years that something was wrong with how they treated him. She'd seen it at birthdays when his achievements were glossed over and his brothers were celebrated. She'd heard it in the way they talked to him, not cruel exactly, but dismissive, like he was background noise in his own life. She'd tried to compensate, tried to be the one person who saw him, who listened, who cared. But she'd never imagined it would come to this, never imagined they'd tell him to handle it alone when he was dying. 5 minutes, Marianne said. The snow was getting worse. Marianne leaned forward, peering through the windshield, counting street signs. West 26 was coming up. The grocery store should be on the right. Eleanor saw it first, the lit-up storefront, the nearly empty parking lot. "There," she said, pointing. Marianne pulled in, tires crunching through fresh snow, headlights sweeping across the lot. They scanned the area, looking for movement, for a person, for anything. "I don't see him," Marianne said, her voice tight with worry. "Keep looking. He said he was outside." They drove slowly through the lot, past abandoned shopping carts, past the employee section, past the loading dock. And then Eleanor saw it, a shape on the ground near the entrance, covered in snow, so still it could have been a pile of discarded coats. "There!" she screamed. "Marianne, there!" Marianne stopped the car, not bothering to park properly, just stopping wherever they were. She grabbed her medical bag from the back seat. She never went anywhere without it, and was out of the car before Eleanor could even unbuckle. Eleanor followed as fast as she could, her feet slipping on the ice, and her breath coming in harsh gasps that had nothing to do with exertion and everything to do with fear. She'd lost her husband 10 years ago to a heart attack. She'd held him as he died, felt him slip away despite everything the doctors tried. She couldn't do that again, not with Andrew, not with her boy. Marianne reached me first, dropping to her knees beside my body. She pressed 2 fingers to my neck, checking for a pulse. Then she leaned down, her ear near my mouth, checking for breath. Eleanor arrived a moment later, looking down at my face, so pale, lips going blue, eyes closed,
snow settling on my eyelashes like I was already a memory. When Marianne looked up at Eleanor, her expression said everything.
"He's alive," Marianne said quickly, seeing the terror in Eleanor's face. "Pulse is weak, breathing shallow, but he's alive." She was already moving, hands swift and certain. She unzipped her medical bag, pulling out a pen light to check my pupils, a stethoscope to listen to my heart. Her movements were practiced, automatic, the kind of efficiency that comes from years of emergencies where hesitation means death. "Andrew," she said loudly, firmly. "Andrew, can you hear me?" I heard her, but from very far away. My eyes wouldn't open, my body wouldn't respond. I was somewhere between awake and gone, trapped in that gray space where you know it's happening, but can't do anything about it. "Unresponsive, but not unconscious," Marianne said, more to herself than to Eleanor. "Possible cardiac event. We need to get him warm and get him to the hospital now." Eleanor dropped to her knees beside me, ignoring the snow soaking through her pants, ignoring the cold that bit through her coat. She took my hand, my frozen, lifeless hand, and squeezed it. "Andrew, baby, it's Grandma. We're here. You're going to be okay. Do you hear me? You're going to be okay." Her voice cracked on the last word. Marianne wrapped a thermal blanket around me, the kind EMTs use, silver and crinkly. She was checking my vitals again, her face close to mine, her breath warm against my frozen skin. "Core temperature is too low. Eleanor, I need you to go start the car and turn the heat up as high as it goes. Can you do that?" Eleanor didn't want to leave me. I could feel her hesitation, her hand tightening on mine. But she trusted Marianne, and she knew following instructions was how you saved lives. She stood up, wobbling slightly, and hurried back to the car. "Stay with me, Andrew," Marianne said, adjusting the blanket. "I know you're tired. I know you want to let go, but you have to stay. Your grandmother came through a blizzard for you. You owe her a few more decades. You hear me?" She was lifting me now, getting her arms under me. I'm not a small man, 6 feet, 190, but Marianne had that nurse strength, that combination of technique and necessity that lets small women move large patients. She got me into a sitting position, then, with a grunt of effort, pulled me up and half carried, half dragged me toward the car. The world spun, my head lolled against her shoulder. I remember the smell of her coat, clean, medicinal, like hospital laundry. I remember thinking this was what being saved felt like. Eleanor had the back door open, heat blasting out into the cold night. Together, they maneuvered me into the back seat. Marianne positioned me carefully, making sure my airway was clear, making sure I wouldn't slide off if she had to brake suddenly. Eleanor climbed in beside me, pulling my head into her lap, stroking my frozen hair. St. Vincent Hospital, 10 minutes if the roads cooperate. She pulled out of the parking lot faster than was probably safe, but safety was relative now. The danger wasn't the icy roads, the danger was time. In the back seat, Eleanor held me and talked to me. She told me about the day I was born, which she had never told me before. How I'd come early, 5 weeks too soon, barely 4 pounds. How my mother had complications and couldn't be there for those first critical days. How Eleanor had stayed at the hospital for 72 hours straight, refusing to leave, sleeping in a chair beside the incubator, her hand reaching through the portal to rest on my tiny chest, feeling my rabbit-quick heartbeat. "You were a fighter then," she whispered. "The nurses said you weren't supposed to make it, but you did. You held on, you fought, and you're going to fight now." I was listening. Somewhere deep inside my failing body, I was hearing every word. She told me about holding me skin to skin because the doctor said premature babies needed that, needed the warmth and heartbeat of another human to remember how to live. How she'd unbuttoned her shirt and held me against her chest for hours, talking to me, singing to me, breathing for both of us. Your mother never knew how bad it was, and I heard something in her voice I'd never heard before. Anger. She was dealing with her own recovery, and maybe that's fair, maybe she couldn't help it, but I was there. I've always been there, and I'm not losing you now. Do you hear me, Andrew? I'm not losing you. Marianne glanced in the rearview mirror, her expression soft with something like grief. She'd seen this before. Families that didn't show up, families that didn't care, and the one person who loved enough for all of them. The hospital was coming into view. The emergency entrance lit up like a beacon. Marianne pulled up to the doors, honking twice, the signal that meant urgent, meant help needed now. Doors burst open. People in scrubs rushed out with a wheelchair, with equipment, with purpose. Marianne was out of the car, giving rapid-fire information. Male, 34, possible MI, found collapsed hypothermic, weak pulse, shallow respirations. They lifted me out of Eleanor's lap, out of her warmth, onto something cold and hard. A gurney. Voices overlapped, urgent and professional. Someone cut my shirt open, someone else was putting things on my chest, wires, monitors. Eleanor stood in the cold, watching them take me inside. Her hands empty now, her lap wet from the snow that had melted off my body. Marianne put an arm around her shoulders. "You did everything right," she said softly. "He's alive because of you." Inside the emergency room, machines were beeping, people were shouting orders, and I was slipping away, my consciousness fading like a signal going dark. The last thing I remember before everything went black was a doctor's voice, sharp with alarm. "We're losing him."
Time became strange after that. Not linear, not measurable, just fragments, flashes of light, voices that echoed like they were coming from underwater, sensations without context. I remember someone saying, "Clear," and my body arching off the table. I remembered the smell of antiseptic and the feeling of being very, very far from my own body. I remember thinking that if this was dying, it wasn't as scary as I'd expected. It was just quiet, just empty. But I wasn't ready for empty. Not yet. When I opened my eyes, or thought I did, I was never sure. I wasn't in the emergency room anymore. I was somewhere whiter, quieter, a hallway maybe. And there were people moving around me, purposeful, urgent. Someone was running beside the gurney I was on. Someone else was talking rapidly about numbers I didn't understand. Then, nothing again. In the waiting room, Eleanor sat with her hands folded in her lap, fingers laced through the rosary beads, lips moving in silent prayer. She'd been praying for 2 hours straight. The same prayer, over and over, the one she'd learned as a child, the one that came automatically when words failed. Marianne sat beside her, not praying, but present, solid, real. She'd gotten them both coffee from the machine down the hall, but neither of them had touched it. The cup sat cooling on the table beside outdated magazines nobody was reading. "He's strong," Marianne said quietly. "He made it this far." Eleanor nodded but didn't speak. She was afraid that if she opened her mouth, everything she was holding inside would come pouring out. The fear, the rage, the desperate bargaining she was doing with God. The waiting room was nearly empty. Thanksgiving night at a hospital. Most emergencies had already happened. Most families were home now, sleeping off their turkey comas. But not Eleanor. Not Marianne. They sat in the fluorescent silence, watching the doors that led back to where they'd taken me, waiting for someone to come out and tell them something. Eleanor kept replaying it in her mind, finding me in the snow, my lips blue, my body so cold. It was too similar to that day 34 years ago when she'd first seen me in the NICU, tiny and struggling, fighting for every breath. She'd been terrified then too, but at least then she'd been younger, stronger, more certain that love and will could overcome anything. Now she was 81. Now she knew that sometimes will wasn't enough. "I should have fought harder," she whispered suddenly. "When he was growing up, I should have said something. I should have made them see him." Marianne turned to look at her. "You were the only one who did see him, Eleanor. But I let them. I watched them ignore him, dismiss him, and I thought, well, at least he has me. At least he knows one person loves him. But that wasn't enough, was it? Because here we are." "Here we are because you answered the phone," Marianne said firmly. "Here we are because you came. That's not nothing. That's everything." Eleanor's hands were shaking now, the rosary beads clicking softly. She was remembering things she'd tried to forget.
Andrew at 10, showing her a report card full of A's, beaming with pride, and his mother barely glancing at it before turning back to her phone. Andrew at 15, making the varsity track team, calling Eleanor to tell her, because no one else cared. Andrew at 23 getting his first real job, taking Eleanor out to dinner to celebrate, because his parents had said they were too busy. She'd always thought she was compensating. She'd always told herself that as long as he had her, he'd be okay. But he'd almost died tonight, and when he'd needed help, his own parents had told him to handle it alone. What kind of people did that? What kind of parents? The double doors swung open. Eleanor's head snapped up, hope and terror flooding through her in equal measure. But it was just a nurse, walking past with a clipboard, not even glancing their way. Eleanor deflated back into her chair. "How long has it been?" she asked. Mary Ann checked her watch. 2 hours and 40 minutes since we brought him in. 2 hours and 40 minutes of not knowing, of imagining the worst, of playing through scenarios where she had to call his parents and tell them their son was dead and having to listen to them pretend to grieve. She wouldn't do it. If the worst happened, and she couldn't even finish that thought, but if it did, she wouldn't call them right away. She'd give herself time to break apart first, in private, without their fake sympathy. "Tell me something," Eleanor said suddenly. "In your professional opinion, the symptoms he described, the way he looked when we found him, was it what I think it was?" Mary Ann hesitated. She wasn't supposed to diagnose. She wasn't part of his medical team here. But she and Eleanor had been through too much together to hide behind professional boundaries now. "It presented like a cardiac event," Mary Ann said carefully. "The chest pain, the shortness of breath, the way he described it radiating. The hypothermia complicated things, but yes, that's what it looked like to me." Eleanor closed her eyes. "He's 34 years old." "I know. How does a healthy 34-year-old man have a heart attack? Sometimes there are underlying conditions, sometimes it's genetic, sometimes," Mary Ann paused, "sometimes stress plays a role. Chronic stress, the kind that builds up over years." Eleanor understood what she wasn't saying. The kind of stress that comes from never being enough, never being seen, never being valued. The kind that lives in your body like poison, slowly destroying you from the inside. The doors opened again. This time a doctor came through. Young, tired-looking, still in his scrubs. His face was serious, the kind of serious that makes your heart stop. He looked around the waiting room, then his eyes landed on Eleanor and Mary Ann. He walked towards them, and Eleanor stood up, her legs barely holding her, Mary Ann's hand on her elbow to steady her. The doctor stopped in front of them, took a breath, and Eleanor braced herself for the worst news of her life.
"Are you family of Andrew Brooks?" the doctor asked. "I'm his grandmother," Eleanor said, her voice surprisingly steady. "This is Mary Ann, his—" She paused, not sure what to call the woman who'd helped save her grandson's life. "She's family too." The doctor nodded, gestured to the chairs. "Please, sit down." Eleanor's legs gave out. She didn't sit so much as collapse back into the chair. Mary Ann sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched, a silent offering of strength. The doctor sat across from them, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. He looked tired in a way that suggested this had been a long shift with difficult cases, but his eyes were kind. "First," he said, "Andrew is stable. He's alive, and we have him stabilized." Eleanor covered her mouth with both hands, a sound escaping that was half sob, half prayer. Mary Ann squeezed her shoulder. "But," the doctor continued, and that single word made Eleanor's brief relief evaporate. There was always a but. That's what doctors did. They gave you hope, then took it away, then gave you something else to worry about. The doctor leaned back slightly, choosing his words carefully. "Mrs. Brooks, your grandson didn't collapse by accident. He wasn't just cold or tired or having a panic attack." He paused, making sure she was ready to hear it. "He was having a heart attack." The words hung in the air like something solid, something heavy enough to crush. Eleanor stared at him. That's not possible. He's 34. I know, but it happened. But he's healthy. He doesn't smoke, he exercises, Eleanor's voice was rising, denial mixing with panic. I understand this is shocking, the doctor said gently. Heart attacks in people his age are rare, but not impossible. We've run tests, EKG, blood work, imaging. The evidence is clear. He experienced what we call a myocardial infarction, a blockage in one of the coronary arteries that supplies blood to the heart. Marianne's professional training kicked in. Was it a full STEMI or NSTEMI? The doctor glanced at her, recognizing another medical professional. NSTEMI, partial blockage, which is actually fortunate. It means less damage to the heart muscle. Damage? Eleanor repeated, her voice breaking on the word. There's damage? Some, yes, but minimal, because the doctor looked directly at Eleanor now, his expression shifting to something like respect. Mrs. Brooks, your grandson didn't collapse by accident. He wasn't just cold or tired or having a panic attack. Mrs. Brooks, I need you to understand something. The time between cardiac event onset and treatment is critical. Every minute matters. If you hadn't brought him when you did, if you had waited even 30 minutes longer, he shook his head. We would be having a very different conversation right now. Eleanor's hands were shaking so badly, the rosary beads were rattling. What are you saying? I'm saying you saved his life. If he'd stayed out there in that parking lot, if no one had come, if he'd tried to drive himself or waited for anyone else, he wouldn't have made it. The silence that followed was deafening. Eleanor couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. The weight of what might have happened, of how close she'd come to losing him, crashed over her like a wave. Marianne spoke for her. What's the prognosis, long term? Good, actually. With proper treatment, medication, lifestyle modifications, cardiac rehab, there's no reason he can't make a full recovery. He's young, which works in his favor. His heart is otherwise healthy. But there it was again, that word. We need to understand why this happened. Family history is a factor. Stress is a factor. We'll need to do more testing, but I'll be honest with you. When I see someone this young with cardiac issues, I start looking at their life circumstances. Eleanor thought about the phone calls Andrew had made before calling her. His family telling him to handle it alone when he was dying in a parking lot. Years of being overlooked, undervalued, treated like he didn't matter. Could stress cause this? She'd asked quietly. Chronic stress? Emotional neglect? The doctor's expression shifted. He'd been doing this long enough to recognize what she was really asking. The medical community increasingly recognizes that chronic psychological stress can have serious physiological effects, including on cardiovascular health. It's not the only factor, but yes, it can contribute. Eleanor closed her eyes. Her grandson almost died because his own family had treated him like he was disposable for so long that his body had started to believe it too. Can we see him? Marianne asked. Soon. He's in recovery right now, still heavily sedated. We had to work quickly when he came in. His heart rhythm was unstable, his body temperature was dangerously low, but he's responding well to treatment. Give us another hour or so to get him settled in a room, and then yes, you can see him. The doctor stood, and Eleanor and Marianne stood with him. One more thing, the doctor said. When he wakes up, he's going to need support. Not just medical support, but emotional support. Recovery from a cardiac event isn't just physical, it's psychological. He's going to be scared, possibly depressed. He's going to need people who care about him. He has me, Eleanor said fiercely. He has us. The doctor smiled, a real smile this time. Then he's lucky. After he left, Eleanor sat back down, suddenly exhausted. She'd been running on adrenaline and prayer for hours, and now that she knew Andrew was going to survive, everything caught up with her at once. I need to call his parents, she said dully. Marianne's hand on her arm stopped her. Do you? Eleanor looked at her. They're his parents. They told him to handle it alone when he was dying in a parking lot. I know, but nothing. You can call them or you can wait.
You can give yourself a moment to process this, to be with Andrew when he wakes up, to make sure he's okay before you invite them in to make it about themselves. She wanted to argue, wanted to say that wasn't fair, that they deserved to know, but then she thought about Andrew waking up, still weak, still scared, and having to face parents who'd abandoned him in his worst moment. Her phone rang. She looked at the screen. Her daughter, Andrew's mother. Eleanor stared at it, watching it ring once, twice, 3 times. Then she looked at Marianne. They're not calling to ask how he's, are they? Marianne's expression was answer enough. Eleanor let it ring. They arrived 2 hours later, not because they'd been worried, but because the hospital had called them. Standard protocol, notify next of kin. My mother, my father, my brother Derek. They came through the emergency room entrance like they were attending an inconvenient meeting, not visiting their son and brother who'd nearly died. I was awake by then, barely. The sedation was wearing off in stages, leaving me floating in that strange space between unconscious and aware. I could hear voices but couldn't quite attach meaning to them. I could feel the weight of blankets on my body, the scratch of IV lines in my arm, the dull ache in my chest that the pain medication was trying to soften. Eleanor was beside my bed. She'd been there since they'd moved me to a room, holding my hand, talking to me even when I couldn't respond. Marianne had gone to get food, to make phone calls, to handle the practical things that needed handling. When my family walked in, Eleanor felt them before she saw them, that particular energy they brought with them, not concern, not love, but obligation wearing a concerned face. "Oh my God, Andrew," my mother said, rushing forward with practiced drama. She reached for my other hand, the one without the IV, and squeezed it once before letting go. "What happened? Are you okay?" I tried to answer, but my throat was too dry. The words came out as a croak. My father stood at the foot of the bed, hands in his pockets, looking at the monitors like they might explain what kind of inconvenience this was going to be. "So, what's the damage? How long is he going to be here?" Eleanor's grip on my hand tightened. Derek leaned against the wall, scrolling through his phone. "Man, you really know how to ruin a holiday." "He had a heart attack," Eleanor said, her voice quiet but hard as iron. "Your son, your brother, had a heart attack at 34 years old." My mother waved a hand dismissively. "They said he's stable now. These things happen. Probably just stress from work. You know how Andrew is, always so dramatic about everything." Something shifted in the room. Even in my sedated state, I felt it. Eleanor stood up slowly, still holding my hand, and turned to face my family. "Dramatic," she repeated. "He called you while he was dying in a parking lot, and you told him to handle it alone. Which part of that was dramatic?" My mother's face flushed. "We were in the middle of dinner. We didn't know it was serious." "He said he couldn't breathe. He said his chest hurt. What part of that sounds like not serious?" "Damn, Mom, we don't need a lecture right now," Derek said, not looking up from his phone. "Andrew's fine. Everything worked out." "Everything worked out," Eleanor said slowly, "because I came. Because Marianne and I drove through a blizzard and found him unconscious in the snow. Everything worked out because we got him here in time. No thanks to any of you." My father shifted uncomfortably. "Look, we're here now. Let's not make this into some big dramatic thing." "Dramatic," Eleanor said again, and I heard something in her voice I'd never heard before. Rage. Pure, undiluted rage that had been building for 34 years. Your son almost died tonight, and you're annoyed that it's inconvenient. "That's not fair," my mother protested. "We've been good parents. We've provided for him, given him opportunities." "You've given him nothing," Eleanor said, and her voice was shaking now. "Nothing but years of feeling invisible in his own family. Nothing but a lifetime of knowing that he doesn't matter to the people who are supposed to love him most." "How dare you?" my father started. "How dare I?" Eleanor's voice rose. "How dare you, all of you, standing here like this is some inconvenience, like he's some burden you have to deal with? Do you even love him? Any of you? Or is he just the person you forget about until someone forces you to remember?" My mother's eyes filled with tears, not genuine ones, but the kind she'd perfected for manipulating situations. "You're being cruel. We love Andrew. We've always loved him." "Then why," Eleanor asked quietly, dangerously. "When he called you tonight, when he was dying, did every single one of you tell him the same thing? Handle it alone." No one answered. Mary Ann stepped forward then, setting down her coffee, her presence shifting the dynamic. She hadn't been quiet until now, but she'd heard every word Andrew had said during that terrible drive. She'd seen his face when he talked about his family. "I'm a nurse," she said, calmly. "I've worked emergency medicine for 15 years, and I can tell you that stress, chronic, long-term emotional stress, is a significant factor in cardiac events, especially in young patients. So when you ask what caused this, when you wonder how a healthy 34-year-old has a heart attack," she looked at each of them in turn. "Maybe look in a mirror." "Who the hell are you to talk to us like that?" Derek finally looked up from his phone. "I'm the person who helped save your brother's life while you were eating pie." I squeezed Eleanor's hand then, weak but deliberate. Everyone's attention snapped to me. My eyes were open now, clearer, taking in the scene, taking in my family standing there like I was an inconvenience, taking in Eleanor, shaking with rage and love, taking in Mary Ann, this woman who barely knew me but had risked everything to help me. "Get out," I whispered. My mother moved closer. "Andrew, honey, get out," I said again, stronger. "You don't mean that. You're upset. You're medicated. I almost died tonight, and none of you cared. So get out." They stood there, frozen, unsure if I was serious. "Now." They left. Not immediately, but slowly, throwing looks over their shoulders, my mother trying one more time to reach me before Eleanor blocked her path. And then they were gone, and it was just Eleanor and Mary Ann and me in the quiet hospital room. Eleanor sat back down, taking my hand in both of hers. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I shouldn't have lost my temper like that." "Don't be sorry," I said. "That was the best thing anyone's ever done for me."
Recovery from a heart attack isn't what people think. It's not dramatic. There's no montage of getting stronger, no inspirational music playing while you slowly rebuild your life. It's small. It's boring. It's taking pills at the same time every day, walking a little farther each afternoon, learning to recognize what real chest pain feels like versus anxiety, versus muscle soreness from sleeping wrong. It's also lonely, or it would have been, if not for Eleanor. She was there every day for the first 2 weeks, not hovering, not smothering, just present. She'd arrive mid-morning with groceries I didn't ask for but needed. She'd cook while I napped, filling my small apartment with smells that made it feel like a home instead of the place I'd been slowly dying in without realizing it. Mary Ann came by 3 times a week, officially checking my vitals, but really just checking on me. She taught me how to take my own blood pressure, how to recognize warning signs, how to advocate for myself with doctors. But more than that, she treated me like I mattered, like my recovery mattered, like I was worth the effort. My family called once. My mother, 3 days after I'd been discharged, her voice bright and false. "Just checking in, wanted to see how you're doing." Like nothing had happened, like I hadn't almost died, like she hadn't told me to handle it alone. I told her I was fine and hung up. She didn't call again. My father sent a text 2 weeks in. "Hope you're feeling better. Let us know if you need anything." I didn't respond. Derek didn't reach out at all. And the strange thing was, I didn't miss them. I thought I would. I thought there would be this aching absence, this grief for the family I'd always wanted but never had. But there wasn't. There was just relief. Relief that I didn't have to perform anymore, didn't have to try to earn love that was never going to be given freely. The doctors figured out what had caused the heart attack. Partially genetic. My father's side had a history of heart disease nobody had bothered to tell me about. Partially lifestyle. I'd been running myself into the ground trying to prove I was worth something. And partially stress. Chronic, unrelenting stress
that my body had been absorbing for years until it manifested as a blockage in an artery that nearly killed me. You can't control genetics, my cardiologist told me during a follow-up appointment, but you can control stress. You can control who you allow in your life and how they treat you. It sounded simple when she said it. It was harder in practice. But I was learning. 6 weeks after the heart attack, Eleanor invited me to dinner at her place, not the nursing home. She'd actually moved out 3 weeks earlier into a small house with Marianne, who'd transitioned from caregiver to roommate to something that looked a lot like family. We have too much space, Eleanor had explained when she told me about the move, and Marianne needed a change. It made sense. What made sense was that 2 women who'd spent their lives taking care of others had found each other and decided to build something new. I drove to their house on Saturday evening in early January. The snow was still thick on the ground, but the roads were clear. The house was small, a cottage-style place with yellow light glowing from the windows and smoke curling from the chimney. Eleanor opened the door before I could knock, pulling me into a hug that was gentle because she knew I was still recovering, but fierce because she was Eleanor. Come in, you're letting the cold in." Inside smelled like pot roast and fresh bread. Marianne was in the kitchen wearing an apron that said, "I'm not bossy, I'm the nurse." And she grinned when she saw me. "Look at you, walking around, breathing on your own. I'm almost impressed." "Almost? Don't let it go to your head." We sat down to dinner at a small table that barely fit 3 people. Eleanor said grace, her voice soft and grateful, thanking God for second chances and for the people who show up when it matters. We ate slowly, talking about small things. Eleanor's garden plans for spring, Marianne's idea to volunteer at the free clinic downtown, my cardiac rehab progress, which was boring but important. Nobody asked about my family. Nobody mentioned Thanksgiving. Nobody tried to fill the silence with forced cheerfulness. It was just easy, just real, just 3 people who'd been through something terrible together and had come out the other side changed but intact. After dinner, Eleanor brought out coffee and pie. Not pumpkin, I noticed. Apple, my favorite. "I've been thinking," Eleanor said, settling into her chair with her coffee cup balanced on her knee. "About that night. About what happened. About what almost happened." I set down my fork. "Grandma." "Let me finish." Her voice was gentle but firm. "I've been thinking about all the times I saw them treat you like you didn't matter, and I told myself it wasn't my place to interfere. I told myself that as long as you had me, it would be enough. But it wasn't, was it? It wasn't enough to balance out all that neglect." "You saved my life," I said quietly. "Twice," she corrected. "Once when you were born, once on Thanksgiving, and I'm grateful I was there both times. But Andrew, you shouldn't have had to almost die for them to see you. You shouldn't have had to collapse in a parking lot to realize that the family you were born into isn't the family you deserve." My throat tightened. "I don't know how to do this, how to just—" "You're not cutting them out," Marianne said, speaking up for the first time. "They cut themselves out. You're just seeing it clearly." Eleanor reached across the table and took my hand. "You get to choose now. You get to decide who deserves to be in your life and who doesn't. You get to build your own family from people who actually show up." I looked around the small kitchen at these 2 women who'd driven through a blizzard for me, who'd fought for me, who'd stayed. "I think I already have." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears, the good kind this time. "Yeah, I think you do." We finished our pie in comfortable silence. Outside, snow started falling again, soft and quiet, but inside it was warm. Inside it was safe. Inside was home. Later, as I was putting on my coat to leave, Eleanor pulled me aside. "You know what the doctors told me when you were born?" she asked. "They said you were a fighter. They said you held on when you shouldn't have been able to. And I see that now. You've been fighting your whole life just to be seen, just to matter." She cupped my face in her weathered hands. "But you don't have to fight anymore, Andrew. Not with us. With us, you just get to be." I hugged her then, carefully, because we were both still fragile in our own ways. "Thank you, Grandma, for everything, for saving me twice." She pulled back, smiling through tears. 3 times, actually. 3? Once when you were born, once on Thanksgiving, and patted my cheek, and once just now by giving you permission to let go. I drove home through the quiet snow, my chest light in a way it hadn't been in years. Not fixed, recovery takes time. Not perfect, recovery isn't linear, but better, different, free. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "We'd really like to see you soon." I looked at it for a long moment. Then I turned off my phone and kept driving. Some families are born, some families are built, and sometimes the ones we build are the ones that save us.